The air was thick and hot that afternoon in Phoenix. The sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked asphalt in front of Mercy General Hospital. In front of the main entrance, blocked by metal barriers and yellow tape reading "Danger Construction Zone," a 6-year-old girl sobbed hard, her little face red, eyes swollen from crying, voice broken by fear. "Please, help my mom!" screamed Emma Martinez, her little hand gripping tightly the dirty, damp skirt of her mother. Rosa Martinez could barely stay on her feet. Her pale face was covered in sweat, and on her lips there was a thin trace of dried blood. The woman breathed with difficulty, as if each gulp of air was a fight against the world. Her body trembled. 3 men in reflective vests and hard hats stood right in front of the closed entrance. They were in charge of guarding the renovation zone. One of them, a tall man with a sparse mustache and dark sunglasses, chewed gum lazily as he watched the scene. "You again, kid? I already told you you can't come through here," he said with annoyance. "My mom's really sick. Let her through. She's dying," begged Emma with a broken voice, tugging at the man's arm. The second guard burst out laughing. He had tattoos on both arms and a half-empty soda bottle in his hand. "Dying? Then take her around. Emergencies by the parking lot, south side." "Can't you read, Brett?" he mocked, pointing to a poorly placed sign indicating a detour. Completely unreachable for Rosa, who could barely walk. Emma looked at her mother, who was already swaying like a tree about to fall. The world seemed to spin around her. The little girl knelt on the sidewalk, hugging her mother's legs desperately. "Please, sir, we can't walk anymore. Just let us through." But the men remained unmoved. One of them even pulled out his cell phone and started recording while giggling. Several passers-by walked on the opposite sidewalk. Some quickened their pace, others looked down. No one stopped. Rosa Martinez took one more step toward the glass door. She grabbed onto the metal frame as a last resort. She coughed hard. Fresh blood stained the ground. Then, with a soft, trembling sigh, her legs gave out. She fell backward, unconscious, her head hitting the concrete gently. "Mom!" shrieked Emma, throwing herself onto her body, hugging her tightly. "Wake up, please! Wake up!" The guards looked at each other. One pretended a look of pity. "What a drama. An ambulance will come, kid. Just calm down." But no one was coming. Cars kept going. A distant honk, an even more distant siren, and the brutal silence of indifference. Emma tried to lift her mother, pulling her arm with what little strength she had. She couldn't move her an inch. In her desperation, the girl screamed so loud her voice broke. "Help!" The echo of her cry barely lasted a second, because that's when the roar was heard. A motorcycle engine, then another and another. 5 motorcycles appeared from the intersection at the end of the street, wrapped in the deep, trembling sound of their engines. Their headlights looked like prehistoric beasts roaring from the asphalt. They advanced in tight formation, like a swarm of iron. All 5 wore black leather jackets with an emblem embroidered on the back, a winged skull, flames, and a name that resonated like a warning: Hell's Angels. Pedestrians moved aside. The guards straightened up. The bikes screeched to a halt in front of the hospital. The leader, riding a black Harley-Davidson with chrome details, shut off the engine with a slow, calculated movement. His presence was imposing. Tall, beard flecked with grey, piercing gaze behind dark glasses. He wore a silver chain around his neck and worn leather gloves. His name, Marcus, was embroidered in red on the chest of his vest. He got off the bike, removed his helmet, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. Marcus's eyes found Emma, a little girl with a dirty face, trembling with fear, hugging the unconscious body of her mother, and behind her, 3 soulless men, unable to see the humanity in front of them. Marcus frowned. His boots echoed loudly as he walked toward the entrance. No one dared to speak. One of the guards tried to justify the situation with an awkward gesture. "The entrance is closed for renovation, sir. You can go around—" But Marcus didn't answer him. He just stopped in front of Emma, crouched down to her level and spoke to her in a firm but calm voice. "Your mum?" Emma nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "She's not breathing right. They won't let her in," she stammered. Marcus stood up, slowly turned toward the guards and spoke to them without raising his voice, but with a tone that admitted no discussion. "Move." The 3 men looked at each other, paralyzed. One tried to smile nervously. Look, it's not personal, but I said. Move. That time was enough. The guard stepped aside without another word. Marcus turned his gaze back to Emma, then to Rosa. He crouched down, slipped one arm under her legs and the other under her back. Carefully, like someone carrying a sacred object, he lifted her in his arms. Rosa's head rested on his chest. Emma followed him, running alongside. The hospital door opened automatically. Inside, the sterile white of the hallway contrasted with Marcus's dark and powerful figure. The nurses and doctors at reception ran toward him when they saw Rosa's condition. Marcus gently placed her on a gurney without saying anything more. He turned around and walked toward the exit. Emma ran after him. Before getting on his motorcycle, Marcus pulled out a worn wallet from the inside pocket of his vest. He extracted a crumpled $20 bill. He gave it to Emma and told her quietly, "For your mum's medicine." The girl looked at him with big, grateful eyes. She hugged the bill as if it were a treasure. Marcus started his bike. The roar filled the avenue again. The 5 bikers rode off, disappearing into the engine smoke and the afternoon sun. Emma stood in front of the hospital, the bill in her hand, looking toward where those men in black jackets had disappeared, who, against all odds, had saved her. The roar of the engines still vibrated in his chest when Marcus Vargas turned off the Harley. His gaze remained fixed on the girl crying while hugging her mother, lying like a lifeless bundle in front of the hospital door. The sun bounced off the hot pavement, but Marcus didn't feel it. He felt something else, a familiar knot in his throat, an old, silent pang he'd been trying to bury for years. He got off the bike, removed his helmet, and hung it on the handlebar. His boots echoed as he stepped on the concrete while walking toward the scene. One of his brothers, Vincent, shot him a doubtful look from the bike. "Everything okay, boss?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Vincent knew that when Marcus got off the bike without speaking, it was because something had touched him deep inside. His steps were slow, but each one weighed like a hammer blow. When he reached the guards, he looked at them with unsettling calm. He knew that this type of men, brave only in uniform, back down when they run into someone who doesn't need to yell to command respect. One of them tried to joke, "Sir, this entrance is closed. You can go around with your—" Marcus didn't let him finish. "Move." Marcus's voice wasn't loud, but it was cutting, irrefutable. For a second, one of the guards made a gesture of resistance. Marcus took one more step closer, without raising his hand, without changing his tone. His presence was enough. His eyes were enough, eyes of someone who has already seen too much. The men stepped aside. Marcus crouched down in front of the girl. "Your mum?" he asked. The girl nodded with tears in her eyes, and that's when a memory hit him like a punch to the gut. Years ago, the hospital was different. In Tucson, the smell of disinfectant was the same. The room was lit with a white, cruel light. On the bed, his daughter Sarah, barely 5 years old, looked at him with those tired little eyes full of fever. Her thin little body could barely lift her arm. "Did you bring my teddy bear, Dad?" Marcus pulled from his jacket pocket a small stuffed animal, dirty with dirt and motor grease. He'd carried it with him for a whole week, waiting for permission to see her. "Here it is, kiddo," he said, forcing a smile that was breaking at the edges. Sarah hugged it with what little strength she had left, and then, without warning, a violent cough. Blood. A lot of blood. Marcus screamed for help. No one arrived in time. Now. Rosa's body was warm and fragile in his arms. The girl, Emma, ran alongside him with trembling little hands. Marcus wasn't a religious man, he never was, but something in that moment made him think about signs, about things he didn't understand, but couldn't ignore. He crossed through the hospital doors as if they were paper. The nurses looked at him surprised. One of them, a woman with curly hair and a determined expression, ran toward him. "What happened?" "She's in bad shape. Couldn't get in." "No one would help her," Marcus said, placing Rosa carefully on a gurney. The nurse nodded and shouted, "Code Red! Get oxygen!" Hospital chaos activated immediately. Gurneys, tubes, gloves. A young doctor took Rosa's pulse and ordered her taken to the emergency area. Emma tried to follow, but a nurse gently stopped her. "You can't go in, sweetie. Your mom's going to be okay, all right? Come, stay with me. Marcus observed everything from a distance, his jaw clenched, fists closed. Vincent and the other 3 bikers were waiting for him outside, but no one dared to pressure him. A soft voice brought him back. "Sir." Emma was in front of him. She had big eyes, still wet from crying, but no longer scared, just grateful. "Are you an angel?" she asked with that innocence that hurts. Marcus slowly crouched down, lowering to her level. "No, kiddo, I'm no angel. But you helped my mom. Nobody else wanted to. Not even those men out there," she said, pointing outside. Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he pulled from the inside pocket of his vest an old leather wallet, worn by time. Inside, next to the money, there was a photo, a girl with straight hair and a huge smile. Sarah. He looked at the photo for a second, then he pulled out a $20 bill. He folded it carefully and handed it to Emma. "For your mum's medicine," he said. The girl took it between her fingers, as if it were a miracle, and suddenly she hugged him. Marcus froze for a second. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to receive a hug like that after so many years. But then, without saying a word, he raised his arm and gave her an awkward pat on the back. "You're going to be okay, kiddo," he murmured, barely audible. He stood up, headed for the exit, and before crossing the door, he turned one last time to see her. Emma was smiling at him, alone, small but strong as iron. Outside, his brothers waited for him on their bikes. Vincent offered him a cigarette. "What was that about, boss?" Marcus lit the cigarette with a trembling hand. "Just something I had to do." And without saying more, he mounted his Harley, started the engine, and let the noise hide everything he felt inside. The sound of the gurney wheels echoed through the hospital corridors. Rosa Martinez, still unconscious, was being taken to the emergency room. 2 orderlies pushed quickly, while a serious-looking doctor checked her vital signs with a frown. Emma, stopped in her tracks by a nurse on duty, tried to keep running after her mom, but soft arms held her back. "Wait, sweetie. You can't go through," said the woman, kneeling to her level. She had hair pulled back in a thick braid and warm, though tired, eyes. "Is my mom dead?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible, as if afraid to break. "No, honey. Your mommy's going to be okay. But she needs the doctors to take care of her first. Will you come with me for a bit, okay?" Emma nodded her head, though her legs didn't want to move. The nurse took her hand and led her to a small waiting room. From the other side of the hallway, Marcus watched everything in silence. Leaning against one of the white columns, his figure seemed out of place in this world of cold lights and sterile walls, as if normal life rejected him, as if he were a stranger inside a place that no longer belonged to him. Vincent entered the hospital behind him, walking with firm steps. He gave the place a quick look. "You look weird in here, brother," he muttered. Marcus didn't respond. "Don't get me wrong," Vincent continued. "You did the right thing, but what's up with this? Since when are we charity angels?" Marcus kept his gaze fixed on Emma, who was now sitting on a vinyl couch, hugging her legs. The nurse had given her a juice box, but she hadn't even touched it. "Does she remind you of Sarah?" Vincent asked, without beating around the bush. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. The name weighed on his chest like a wet brick. He nodded slowly. "She has the same look," he said, barely moving his lips. A dense silence settled between them. Vincent crossed his arms. "And then what? You gonna take responsibility? You gonna stay here waiting for the lady to wake up?" "I don't know," Marcus answered, without taking his eyes off the girl. "I didn't plan any of this." Vincent sighed. He put a hand on his shoulder and gave it a brief squeeze. "I'll wait outside." When Vincent left, Marcus slowly approached Emma. His boots weighed more than ever. He crouched next to her and pulled out a $20 bill folded in 4 parts. "For your mum's medicine," he said, offering it to her. Emma took it carefully, as if afraid it would disappear into thin air. She looked at it, then put it in the pocket of her dress with the same reverence one keeps a medal. "Thank you, sir." Marcus stayed squatting in front of her, not knowing what to say, until Emma pushed herself toward him and hugged him tightly, holding on as if her life depended on that gesture. Marcus's body tensed instantly. No one had touched him like that in years, not even his bike brothers. But after a second, his left arm moved slowly and wrapped around the girl. He held her in silence, the murmurs of nurses, the sound of intercoms, the walking of hurried steps. Everything faded away. For a few seconds, only the two of them existed, in the middle of a hospital where life and death crossed paths every day. In the emergency room, the monitors beeped in a steady rhythm. Rosa Martinez, still pale, breathed with difficulty. An oxygen mask covered her face. The doctor adjusted the IV drip and checked the blood test results on a tablet. "She has a severe lung infection," she told the assistants. "Probable pneumonia. We're going to start antibiotics immediately." She was on the verge of respiratory collapse. A nurse asked, "Family?" "A girl alone," another answered. "She's with Rosa in the waiting room. Let's stabilize her. Then we can talk to the girl." An hour later, in room 112, Rosa opened her eyes. The white light blinded her for a second. She tried to sit up, but a small hand gently stopped her. "Mum," Emma whispered. Rosa turned her face with effort. Her daughter's voice brought her back from the abyss. "Where am I?" "In the hospital. You're safe now." Rosa tried to remember, but everything was a blur. The barriers, the men, the fall. Only one fragment kept repeating in her mind. Emma screaming. Did you bring me?" Emma shook her head and smiled tenderly. "No, Mom, angels did." Rosa blinked. "Angels?" "Yes," Emma said, leaning in to whisper in her ear. "Hell's angels." Rosa didn't understand, but seeing her daughter's eyes lit up with hope, she closed her eyes again, letting a tear escape. There, among the cold corridors and the beeping machines, something invisible had transformed. A thin line between two worlds, the world of abandonment and the world of compassion, had been crossed. The morning sun came through the hospital window like a warm caress. Rosa Martinez woke slowly, her body still sore but her heart calmer. The oxygen was no longer necessary. She was alive. Emma slept on the edge of the bed, her head resting on her mother's arm, as if she'd been there all night. Rosa stroked her hair tenderly, trying to piece together the still hazy memories. She remembered the pain, the fall, Emma's desperation, and then just shadows, echoes, engines, a strong figure lifting her from the ground, a smell of leather and gasoline, an angel without wings, but with a black jacket and eyes of war. When the nurse came in with breakfast, Rosa asked, "And the man who helped us? Where is he?" The nurse smiled. "He left a while ago. As soon as the doctors came in, he left without a word." "Did he leave a name?" "No, just this," she said, and pointed to Emma's hand. The girl was still asleep, but clutched in her little fingers was a crumpled $20 bill, folded in 4 parts. Rosa took it carefully. It was stained with sweat, slightly torn at one corner, but something about it seemed sacred to her. "I'm going to keep this," she said quietly. Miles to the south, the roar of 5 bikes cut through the highway like blades in the wind. Marcus Vargas rode in front, eyes hidden behind dark glasses, but his mind wandering far away. The highway was long, infinite, like the echo of his past. To his left, the mountains. To his right, the desert that seemed never to end. Behind, Phoenix slowly disappeared, taking a piece of him with it. Vincent pulled up alongside on his bike and shouted over the engine, "Where we headed now?" Marcus didn't answer. He just accelerated. A few miles ahead, they stopped at an abandoned gas station to rest. Marcus got off the bike, opened the side compartment, and pulled out a small tin box. Inside, among old maps, used lighters, and improvised tools, was a carefully folded photograph. It was Sarah, his daughter, 5 years old, the same age as Emma. Smiling with an ice cream cone in her hand and her hair flying in the wind. Marcus sat on the ground, leaning against his bike. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it, but didn't smoke it. He just left it between his lips, lit, while he looked at the photo. "I didn't save my daughter," he murmured, "but maybe this time I did something right." Vincent watched him from afar, not daring to interrupt. Marcus put the photo away and stared at the sky. It had been a long time since he'd felt this kind of peace. It wasn't happiness, it was something simpler, more rare, as if finally the noise inside had quieted down a little. At the hospital, Emma opened her drawing notebook. With colored crayons, she had made a large figure in the center of the page. A black motorcycle, with wings on the sides and a heart in the middle. Above, in shaky but determined letters, she had written, "Thank you, Hell's Angel." The wind dragged dust across the highway. The motorcycles started up one by one, and the roar filled the air again. And as they disappeared into the horizon line, a voiceover seemed to speak not just for Marcus, but for all those who, at some point, were judged by their appearance, by their silence, by their scars. Sometimes the real angels don't dress in white or float in the sky. Sometimes they have dirty hands, tired eyes, and hearts covered by old leather. But they show up when they're needed most. Without promises, without applause, they just do the right things and leave.